and welcome to my February wrap-up of all the books that I read in the month of February. I have 6 to show you, so let's get started. The first book that I read in the month of February is actually a play, and it is A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. Sorry. This is a Victorian play about a woman called Nora who's married to a man that's a bit older than her. She has several children and she's a bit childish herself, or a little bit ditzy, I suppose we'd say. And we follow her life within her family, and she's one of these characters that you I was very unsure if I actually liked her, but by the end my heart was just completely going out to her. So the book just really kind of wins you round. I'd love to go and see it. I think it'd be brilliant on stage. I do recommend it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, but it's not my favourite play that I've ever read. The next book that I read in the month of February was my Agatha Christie read, and that is The Clocks. This is one of Hercule Poirot's later novels, and it tells the story of a woman called Sheila Webb, who's a typist, and she's booked to go to a woman called Miss Pedmarsh's house. If Miss Pedmarsh isn't in, she's to let herself in and to wait for her. So she does as instructed, she goes in, she goes to wait for her, and she finds a dead man behind the back of the sofa. Oh. Now, it's Poirot, so this book is really good. However, you have to wait until like halfway through to the novel to even have a glimpse of Poirot, and even then he doesn't quite stick around. And sometimes when this happens, I don't mind, because the characters are kind of strong enough and the plot is strong enough itself to kind of uphold it. However, I'm not sure if this book had the ability to do that. I would have liked a bit more Poirot. I know it does work, because if you've read Sad Cypress by Agatha Christie, it's a similar sort of thing. You only get Poirot halfway through. But that book, for me, was amazing. It's one of the best. However, this one, I just don't think, as I said, the plot and the character is kind of strong enough and addictive enough just to keep it going. But I still would recommend it because it's Poirot. Poirot's amazing. End of. The third book that I read in the month was, guys, it was amazing. Oh, this was so good. This was Patience by John Coates. If you kind of don't recognise this kind of uniformy grey cover, this is a Persephone book. Persephone print books that for whatever reason have gone out of print previously, and there's this kind of bit of a myth going around that Persephone only print women. They did originally, but this person's called John, and last time I checked that was a man's name. So yeah, this is a man that wrote this. They're now printing works by men, and I'm so glad that they have. Oh, this book is so good. Now, the title of this, get this, it's ingenious. It's about a woman called Patience. Who'd have thought it? Ingenious. Patience is a 20-something woman. She's married to a man that's quite a bit older than her. She's got 3 children by her husband, 3 girls. She thinks she might be expecting a 4th. And this book is all about adultery and religion in the 1950s. This book was just ridiculous. It's one of these books where you just have to stay awake for and you have to finish. And I think I finished it within about 24 hours. I couldn't put it down. It was so good. Oh, I want everyone to read this. And if you have read this, I don't know if I'm the only one that did this, but the ending of it was so beautifully amazing. The paragraph where it kind of fast forwards a little bit and tells you what's kind of happening at the end. I was like this when I was reading it. I was literally like a goldfish, and I had to read it about 10 times because it was just so beautiful. I didn't want it to end. This was so good. So, as you could probably guess, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. It's just beautiful. It is so exquisite. I cannot recommend this highly enough. Go read it. After the amazingness that was Patience, I kind of went on a bit of a scour of my books. Now, I have 4 bookshelves plus other books dotted around. I think I own about just over 500 books, basically. And out of those 500 books, I didn't know what to read. Nothing was appealing to me. Things were like, oh, that seems alright, that seems alright, but nothing was just screaming at me. So in the end, I picked up about 10 books, one of which I finished, which was the next book. The rest I'm still currently reading, so oh well. There was a book that I did pick up that kind of did catch me and draw me in, and it's really good and I really want you guys to read it. And it is Wild Strawberries by Angela Thirkell. I never hear or I never see this book around YouTube or BookTube, and I think it's such a shame because this book is really good. This book was written in the 1930s and tells the story of Mary, who comes to her family's manor. And while she's there, she goes to all the 1930s parties, all the afternoon teas and all that. And there she meets a man called David. Now, David is probably what in contemporary terms we'd call a little bit of a player. And she's very attracted to him because he's very charming. However, her family living at the manor want her to marry someone that is respectable and someone they think is more well suited. So who will Mary go for? The kind of naughty, playerish David, who she's attracted to, or kind of the safer, more suitable option? Well, if you read it, you find out. This book was just, it was fabulous. I think perhaps if I hadn't have read Patience beforehand, this might have got 5 out of 5 stars. But because of Patience, I had to give it 4 just because it wasn't up to that standard. It's as simple as that. And to be honest, the first couple of chapters you are kind of bombarded with these characters that are just being thrown at you and you're just like, I don't know who anyone is. It takes you quite a long time just to get through it. I'm sure next time I read this it'll be absolutely fine and I'll know who everyone is, but I think just for the first time you read it, it is a bit of a bombardment. But it's still really good and I still recommend it, so go check out some Angela Thirkell. She's awesome. So the next book that I read was a children's book. It's a children's non-fiction book, and it is Avoid Being a Suffragette, written by Fiona MacDonald and illustrated by David Antrim. I'm hoping that on this channel I can do some discussion videos about history, and part of that history being about the suffragette movement. So I was just kind of checking out what kind of children's literature there was already out there. I'll show you some of the pictures. It wasn't anything that was great, and it's not anything that will kind of stick in your mind forever and a day, but it was quite good and it did kind of cover the basics, and it did kind of cover the UK and the USA as well. So there was kind of 2 different sides, which is quite interesting and you don't often find in books such as this. So it was good. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The final book that I read in the month of February was an adult non-fiction book. It is Costume from 1500 to the Present Day. This is by the Pitkin Guide and written by Callie Blackman. Now, when I get non-fiction books that I find really interesting and I want to read a bit more about, I write notes, which is what I did with this one. This book is really good. It's so beautiful. It's been so beautifully done. They've used fabulous examples, and the way that they've kind of worded it, because they obviously don't have that many pages, I think this is about 32 pages in total, they've kind of condensed everything down into the bare bones of kind of what you need to learn, and then you can kind of go off and explore it further if you want to. Of course, I was probably mostly interested in these pages, which is like all the vintage stuff, but I think the only reason why I'm kind of interested in that a bit more is because it's more accessible for me to study, because I can buy actual examples of it rather than having to go to museums. So it was beautiful and it was interesting, and I'm definitely gonna expand my study now and find out a bit more from 1500 onwards about costumes and everyday dress. So that's it. that's all the books that I read in the month of February. I read a grand total of 6, which isn't too bad. I'm hoping to read a bit more in the month of March though. Let me know if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them, and I shall see you in my next video. Bye for now!